In this video, Krista McNally shares her inspiring journey from crime reporter to storyteller to the meaningful work with the Dominican Sisters of Amityville. Discover how empathy, grassroots activism, and faith intersect to create an impactful community. Check it out.
I went into her room and she was just unreal. I mean, she was telling me things about her life, her experience, how she got involved with the sisters. Just blew my mind.
I really have a pro that I'm going to be interviewing named Krista McNally. She was a former News 12 reporter. She reported on the crime scene. She got involved by interviewing the oldest nun in the world, which is Sister Frances Domenici, which I had the opportunity as well. And she got to know the Dominican Sisters of Amityville. And what I'd like to talk to her about is the strength of women and the grassroots work that the sisters do and the associates in the Dominican order. And I want to welcome Krista McNally to the We Move
Thank you for having
Forward
me.
Together podcast. Hey, Krista, so good to have you. Thank you for doing this. And hey, you got to tell me your experience because we're kind of like parallel here, right?
Yeah.
We were recanting this a little bit off camera. Is your first real exposure to the Dominican Sisters? Tell me about that interview.
So I reached out because, of course, the oldest sister in the globe is right here on Long Island. And I was working for News 12 at the time. And her birthday had just passed. But I said, this is still like really such a good story. Who would know, like, we had the oldest living nun here? So I reached out, and after like setting up the interview and whatever, they're like, yeah, of course, you could come in, you could speak to her. I said, all right, can we get in early? Like, is she doing anything before I come in? You know, TV, we like to kind of get that behind the scenes. Like if someone's, reading a Bible or doing her rosary, whatever.
The B-roll.
They told me she's getting her nails done and she doesn't want it on camera. And I said, this is going to be a fun interview. So like immediately before I even walked in the door, I was like already surprised at her wit and, her personality for being her age. I mean, like if you think about it, she's seen World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, like she's things that like most of us can't fathom, obviously,
Right.
She's lived through it. So I was already impressed with her before I even got there, just knowing A, she was getting her nails done, woman from my heart.
Right.
and B, that she was like ready to do this and like ready to interview and sit down with me. So I went and everyone there, like from the minute I walked in the door, was super like proud of her presence and very in awe of her. And they were like, are you ready? We're going to bring you in. You're going to speak with her. And then I went into her room and she was just unreal. I mean, she was telling me things about her life, her experience, how she got involved with the sisters that were just blew my mind, and she'd been working there for, almost 100 years of service, which is wild to think about. Most people can't even say like lived 100 years. No, she has 90 years of service.
Right.
And then, and she was also a teacher, retired from teaching at college. That was super impressive. Just everything about her was so impressive. And then she was telling me a little bit about her story, which I can get into if you want, but she was the one keeping the interview going. I'm leaving. I'm like, I have a 5 o'clock deadline.
Right.
I got to get this on air for 5, whatever. And she was the one just like really enjoyed being interviewed. Of course, then we were filming her after, getting all the shots of her for TV that make it all beautiful. The shots of her hands and close-ups of her face and all that fun stuff. And it was great. That was my first real introduction to the sisters. Then, of course, you make a million more connections. So then Sister Peggy, who's there.
Peggy McVetti, yep.
Yeah, she was in my high school. She worked in my high school back when I was in high school, St. John the Baptist.
Okay, gotcha.
So she was there for a very long time. So then she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's you. I can't believe you're on TV. I'm like, I can't believe it's you. You're doing so well, everything. So then we got to talking, and then eventually they had asked me if I can host their annual luncheon.
Wow.
That's surrounds all around women empowerment, which of course I was like happy to do, I love that.
You know, it's amazing. So, by the way, for those who are watching this, at the end of this episode, there'll be links to my interview with with Sister Frances Domenici. But I had a similar experience, and what I learned, and what really caught me, because I had the same introduction to the Dominicans as you did. You know, after years of going to Catholic school and grammar school, that was my first experience directly with nuns. Tell me if this happens with you. My thing was like, these they're hardworking, they're unsung, they're in the trenches, they know what the heck's going on, but they're so joyful. It just kind of there's a palatable joy. And with Sister Frances Domenici, there's a palatable grit and determination. I mean, she was a professor of mathematics at Malloy till she was 85 years old,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And they live that. I feel like they know it, and it's such like a welcoming and happy place to be. And like you said, they're all working so hard. And when you hear about the work she did when she first joined the con, your mind is blown with how much they do a lot now. But when you hear about when she first entered, she told me all about how she was cleaning and they helped maintain the grounds. And then back then, because this is the early half of the 1900s,
Right.
helping farming so that
Yep.
there would be food for the other sisters that were there and the priest and everyone involved. Like it blows your mind. It
Yeah.
blows your mind.
What's interesting to me is one, their story over 100 years. And the purpose, by the way, of this podcast is really to talk about the connections to the Dominican order and the four, what we call energy centers, which are ecology. She touched on the farming, right? Community, spirituality, and social justice, which is really in my wheelhouse of where my heart is, especially what's happening in the country today. So what they want to do, and I'm going to ask the audience, if anybody's interested, look in the description. There's ways to connect of if any of those energy centers kind of strike you of, hey, you know what? That's where my heart is. Contact us. We'll put you together with some great women of power. So tell me about your work with that, the empowerment of women. And you know what? I think men have kind of screwed up the earth over centuries, and you guys should really take more charge. Tell me about it.
So when I spoke at their annual luncheon, you touch on those things, and then you make so many reference to women that have women. I find
Uh-huh.
have obviously that soft, maternal, loving touch to them, which so many. All of the sisters really have. You could feel their warmth when you're in their presence. You could feel it. So when I hosted their luncheon, you feel that welcoming warmth, like as if you're with your mom, your aunt, somebody close to you.
Right.
And it's a warmth through that also comes through in strength. So even when speaking with them, I made reference to people like Mother Teresa, like soft, small, the way she was, very like tiny and
Demure,
small, but
right. Yeah.
filled with so much love and compassion that then, of course, her message went all over the world. And she's somebody that's special to me in really everything I do. I don't really exactly have a reason why. I felt like my mother always gravitated towards, like, my mother did art for very many years, so she drew
Okay.
pictures of her, of Mother Teresa, and gave them to different churches and schools, and she always had books on them. So I feel like I gravitated towards that. So I tried to incorporate the works of Mother Teresa into my speech to the women that day. And then, of course, the women were all coming together, and many of them not sisters, opening up their pocketbooks for the cause and
Uh-huh.
participating in raffles and, helping them in any way they can. But it was such like a beautiful event, and to look around and see the strength of women and then all of them in one room, for me as one of the younger people probably in the room, it was very, very powerful. It's something that you look up to, but you strive to be, even if you're not a member of the Dominican Sisters. You see, like, so for me, I have two kids at home, but the way that they live their lives and the way that they give to others, I feel like is inspiring to everyone, especially as a younger person speaking to them. I felt like I was honored to be able to speak to them when they're really the ones that should be, preaching to me. It should
Right,
really
right.
should be the opposite. So to be there with them and in that room was something that honestly I'll never forget. I did it once before. They have another one coming up. We'll see if they'll ask me again. I'm sure they will. You know how that goes. Once you volunteer for one, it
Right.
usually keeps going. So
You're in. You know what jumped out at me? You said the word preaching. And if you look at any Dominican Sister of Amityville, they have the initials OP, which is Order of Preachers. And what I find so fascinating is they really preach through their actions. And if you think about it, they know how to live in community. And I'm always thinking, you know what, especially with younger people today, and, we get caught up in social media, which we're doing now, yet we become less social and less connected. And yet I find that Dominicans know how to stay connected. And if you're a person listening to this or watching this, you got to ask yourself, how can I make connections with the type of people that I admire and the work they do? And how can they mentor me into other things? Hey, we're not looking to turn everybody into a nun or an associate, but we're looking to people of goodwill to say, you know what, that's a vehicle for me. And I got to ask you this, Krista. So you talked about the empowerment of women and empathy, right? You were a journalist. You were a crime reporter. I was watching your reels on YouTube and put together really well. How is how has empathy played a role in the tough, I would think, a tough job of reporting on horrific crimes and criminals and the effects of it?
well, you have to have empathy. You have to have empathy because sometimes the things I find myself reporting on are so hard to
Hmm.
even say. So I'll give you an example. I
Yeah,
covered a
please.
full trial of this boy, Thomas Balva, who was left in his garage and froze to death at the
Oh,
age of
yes,
eight
yes. I
years old.
remember that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was out East Long Island, and we covered the whole trial. So when you're sitting in a trial,
Wow.
as a human being, as a mom, my son was 8 at the time.
Oh,
You're
boy.
listening from the teachers, the people that knew him. You're seeing autopsy photos of this
Oh,
young child. It's really very painful and it's very, very hard. And to be honest, on a personal level, outside of like journalistically, it was hard. It was a hard story to tell. So I had spoken to someone that I know, a very good friend of mine. I expressed to her, what I was feeling. I said, of course, I'm a journalist. The story's got to be fair and balanced. But as a mother, like I'm looking at, you know,
mm.
horrendous things that's very hard for me to take. And she explained, she's like, sometimes you have to be the voice of the victims. So
I
even if
see.
this boy can't hear or speak, excuse me, even if he can't speak, because unfortunately he passed away, like somebody has to be able to tell the story.
Right.
Somebody's got to have, and that empathy and understanding and being able to tell a story that's so important maybe in turn could save another child's life, maybe another child that's going through one abuse or another at home. Maybe there'll be changes to the system that these children are protected more, but somebody's got to stand up and tell the story. So I find that empathy is very important because you're running into people in the worst moment of their life. So, I'm knocking on doors when people just lost a family member to a horrendous tragedy or, if you think about it, the stories that make it newsworthy usually, if you're a crime reporter, are very, very terrible tragedies. So you
Right.
have to have empathy when you approach people. So I would never, you know, you've got to be able to look at them in a way that they trust you, they understand you, and they know you're going to tell their side of the story. And it's very hard and it's a very delicate balance because you always have to tell both sides of the story. As a journalist, can't no matter who's
Right.
right and who's wrong, you have to tell both sides. But if people could see that you understand them and you understand their situation, it makes you all the more better at your job. And that's what I find really, that's where empathy comes in. That's where if you could see someone struggling and say, like, I see you, I hear you, like, how would you want to, let's say, honor your loved one?
Hmm.
Then they feel compelled to speak with you and tell their story. So empathy plays a huge role in everything that I do. You also have to have empathy for the people that are facing a lifetime in jail for, the crime that they may have committed. You have to be fair to them. You have to be fair all around.
Right,
So that
right,
empathy needs to come through in order to be able to do your job correctly and do it in a way that people are going to want to see your story, you know?
right, right. I tell you, there is definitely an art to telling a story. There is, I was just thinking about, it's a famous quote that Stephen Colbert had with Anderson Cooper on CNN, where I'm paraphrasing here, he says everything, even the most difficult things, are a gift from God. And his father and brother died horribly in an accident, and Anderson was like, "Do you really believe that?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Even though I didn't want it to happen, okay, what did I gain from it? I gained empathy, going through pain, going through something that you can connect with somebody and make that human connection. Yeah, maybe it was a gift. It's tough to go through. I mean, there's pain in life."
So my sister was in the hospital for
Okay.
8 months. So what happened when she went through a routine surgery and she got septic, and
Right.
she was read her last rites 3 times.
Oh my God.
So to say it was the worst it could be, it was the worst that you could ever imagine.
Right.
So, and my family, I mean, this is a lot of it, but we're very close. Like, even, I have two sisters and we do everything together. Even now, we all can only live 1 mile apart and we're all adults, but we can't do anything without the other piece of the puzzle. My whole family, my parents included. And when she had gotten sick and she had, I can't remember, at least 12 surgeries, and
Yeah,
she's
I
read
saw
her
that.
last rites 3 times. She also is such a strong person. And the day they told her, like, all right, you're good to start like walking around a lot, and we want to like
Wow.
get you walking, because all of her organs failed one after the next. Her lungs, that like everything just failed. As
Oh
one
my
would
God.
get better, one would fail. And the day they told her she could start walking, she started running, and she ran the New York City Marathon 6 months later. So
Oh,
she is somebody that I made that video because, in a backstory, she was supposed to run the New York City Marathon with my mother and my other sister before she got sick, and she got sick.
oh,
So they
wow.
lost like a member of the team.
Right.
And after she went through this time that was just like, we didn't know if we would lose her, she was like, no, I'm strong. I could get through this. I could do this. And the second they said, like, okay, you could start like moving, and you're good to move forward with life, you're leaving the hospital, she started running and she ran the marathon such a short time later. And, so I make my contribution. I don't run, but I'm the video maker of the family. When you work on
You're the
TV,
storyteller.
you're the storyteller. So I made that video, for her and for her training. And then that year she had the surgery because she has endometriosis, which 1 in 10 women have. It's very
Okay.
common. It's hereditary. And that year she was the highest fundraiser on the entire endometriosis foundation team for the New
Wow.
York City Marathon. And she was honored at a ball in Manhattan. So it was, her life came full circle. And then of course I was there to tell the story and make the video.
Yeah, and that ties into, so you're there, how many of us have been present with somebody and yet helpless? Like, what can I, you feel like you can't do, there's nothing you can do. I mean, and some of us turn to fight the medical guys and try to do this and that, and we're all kind of pushing hopefully in the right direction. So, um, man, that's where you gain empathy, right? For seeing your sisters struggle. You know what? You guys looked a lot the same. That's why I thought it
Yeah,
was
we
you.
do. We do. I don't know if I'm as strong as her though.
Uh,
I definitely look up to her strength. She might be the youngest, but stronger than all of us, I think.
that's really great. And that's where, the lesson for me, and that's family community, right? You're leaning on each other's shoulders to get through this, emotionally and physically. And man, God bless your sister. That's great. I got to have her on.
Yeah. She's
Holy
great. Well, and
mackerel.
then now she's a nurse because it inspired her whole
Oh, come
scenario to
on.
help people like what she went through. So she is now a nurse. Yes, and she's doing very, very well.
So
So,
now through that almost tragedy, right? Tragic
yeah,
time, you know,
she
50
signed up
some
for
odd,
nursing school. Yep.
and now she's a blessing to other people.
Yep.
That's really great. And that's, that's what I'm finding. And I always bring back to the sisters, I'm finding these, and you said, like, once you get pulled in, you're pulled in, right? Is the other connections that you have with each other. What led you to journalism? What led you to pursue a career in front of the camera?
So this sort of an interesting story too. So when I was right around 12 when September 11th happened,
Okay.
2001. And my mother was always very adamant that our eyes be open to the world and what's going on
Okay.
around us. And so my dad went in to volunteer to help in the relief efforts. He worked in construction at the time. Remember they were calling people in to
Oh
clear the
yeah, sure.
rescue and
Welders.
recovery
Yep.
when they thought they would be finding a lot more people. Unfortunately, you know how
Right.
that played out. But as soon as they could let people into the city, like the general public, my mother took me and my sisters in. So this was maybe like a week or two later. It was very soon after. And she
Wow.
said, like, you're living through history. This is something you have to see. So we went in. I had my digital camera, remember the wind up things and click,
Yeah.
and I took all pictures as close as we could get to ground zero.
Wow.
And there was something in that moment where, all of the TV people were around. And I
Hmm.
looked around and I said, like, that's where I want to be. I want to be the person to tell the story. That's my calling, and th- I was a kid and that was it. Like from that moment on, I knew that
Really?
was like I meant to tell stories. And not for any, my progress reports always said talk too much. At least I could
You
talk.
and me both.
At least I could talk, so that ended up being a skill, but it's not like, history and language arts and all, they were never my favorite topics. I was always more of like a math and science person, but even at
Okay.
that, like I knew I wanted to tell stories. So from that moment on, I kind of did anything I could that would lead me to a career in TV. So I went, like I said, to high school at St. John's and they had a television program. So I
Oh,
did
okay.
that all of high school. I did the morning announcements and I stumbled over my words every single day and called people the wrong names and couldn't pronounce any of the athletes' name in in the announcements and made a bazillion mistakes. And it was a great learning experience. And from there I found a college. I went to Iona that like fit, they had a great TV program. And while there, I found one person that worked in TV and wrote him a letter and begged, "Can I just take you to lunch? Can I just take you to lunch? I just want to figure out, like, how do you get
How
in
do you get
TV?
in?
How do you get
Yeah.
in? I don't get it." And he said, "Come in. I'll give you a tour of the studio and bring your resume for an internship." And then the
Wow.
rest is history. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So then I interned like a maniac until I could get my foot in the door.
oh, good for you. Good for you. It's funny, and I love public speaking. It's funny, and then I get more critical about public speaking and watch stopgaps, and you're great. So nice. Your presence on camera is great, and you're a storyteller. You have empathy, and you know what? You took the time today to speak with us here on We Move Forward Together. By the way, anybody who's watching, please subscribe. There's a thing called the hype button. Hit that hype button. That helps spread the word here and get the stories out of what's happening with the Dominican Sisters of Amityville and from associates and the foundation, especially through education with Malloy University. And a lot of them were teachers. Sister Peggy McVetti, great gal who went to public school her whole life, and now she's the current prioress. Had her. You'll see a link on the YouTube channel for that as well. And there's so many great stories to tell. And Krista, I just want to thank you. Thank you for doing what you do, getting involved with the sisters, and they need an MC and someone who could speak. And I hope they invite you back.
Hopefully. But you know how it goes. Whatever skills you have a skill to create this podcast, you help where you can. It's if I could do it, I try to do it all the time. It's like anything else, they do such good work that if you can help someone else in even a tiny way, obviously I'm not out there with the sisters doing all the amazing work that they do. Like I said, if I could offer one thing in my spare time, you know how it goes with kids and a house and a career. Like, there's not too much spare time.
Yeah, and you know what it is, just like your mom was, the influence of you to get you out of the bubble of, suburbia and say, "Hey, this is living history." That's a big risk. A lot of parents don't do that. They try to shroud their kids from things. But just think that act that she did for you that put you where you are now. For the people in the audience, you never know. Get involved with us. If you see something that, hey, this kind of is the wheelhouse I want to be in, there are women of grit and humility and talent at the Dominican Sisters that are willing to help you any way you can, because it's all about continuing the mission and God's good work with people out there. So, hey, thanks for being here, Krista. It's so great to meet you. Can't wait to meet you in person.
Yes.
And I know we can't say it, but we know you're taking a new turn in your career, and I wish you all the best. I can't wait till you break the news, as
Thank
I
you.
said.
You and me
All right.
both.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, until next time, be well, everybody.